it was so interesting. But Vivek and I met over Twitter and DM, right? We DM'd each other. That was our first time
Wow.
meeting. And he too, like you, he was watching that 2022 race and he liked it. He liked me. He liked what I was saying. And if you recall, there's a lot of similarities in the things that I was saying in 2022 and what Vivek was saying in
Yep.
2023 and today. But he liked it, and so he actually liked me first on Twitter, and then I was preparing for my next debate with Dr. Oz and others, and I went out and I got his book, Woke Inc. Here it is, right here on my desk. Here's my book, Nothing to Lose, Everything to Gain: Being Black and Conservative in America. But I went out. I wanted to find someone who was beyond the talking points on ESG and what ESG really means and the impact of those three simple little letters. And it was Vivek. No one had ever been so clear about it. And so I went to like him on Twitter, but I saw that he had actually liked me. I DM'd him and said, we should talk. Replied immediately and said yes and sent me his phone number. And next thing I know, we're texting. I'm now in Washington, in New York, at the New York Stock Exchange. His new company that he had formed, Strive Asset Management, was going public. He invited me. Next thing I know, I'm at his home, staying the night with him and his family, and then he told me he was strongly considering a run, and I loved it. I loved it from the moment he said it. In fact, I kind of felt like something. I've been watching him for some time, and I
Mhm.
began to see a shift in the way he speaks. And so it was just right, and I loved it. We have, think what you want about Vivek. At this point, I really don't care. I didn't care that much before. Certainly don't care now because it doesn't take long if you are truly a conservative and you actually understand what it is we're supposed to be conserving as conservatives. It doesn't take long to listen to him, to read about him, to read what he has said, to realize that one, he gains very little by being very open about his thoughts that align with conservative
That's
thought
true.
thinking.
That's very true.
But secondly, I in my lifetime, I have never seen anyone speak our values so clearly, unapologetically as I did with Vivek. And so I will always support him. I think he's an amazing person and would be a huge asset in this
Yeah,
administration.
I was telling people, I said, look, I mean, oh, Vivek's this. He sounds like Obama. I said, he sounds like Obama. When did Obama ever say he wanted to gut 75% of the bureaucracy? I've never heard Obama. But he used the line in the debate states or whatever. People could do things differently. But I always looked at who he was surrounding himself with and who was involved in the
Yes.
campaign, and it was all either conservatives like you or people who were attached to prominent conservatives a cycle ago. And I thought he was a great candidate. I do. I really I want him to
Yeah.
be involved in the administration. Like you said, I think we would do very well if he was involved in that administration. I want to touch on this idea of what are we actually conserving, right? How would you
Hmm.
define that? What are we as conservatives in your mind and your vision supposed to be conserving as we call ourselves conservatives?
I know, right? Political conservatism. I actually just wrote an article. I'm kind of pitching it around right now. Hopefully, it will get picked up. But political conservatism, we are supposed to be conserving those values that have made our nation who she is, that have made us strong and prosperous. You can kind of start off with the 1776 values. We're supposed to be conserving that, right? Like life, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness is really self determination, that I get to decide what it is I want to do. So, political conservatism, we're supposed to be conserving those values that have made our nation great, like life. We will protect life. like the right not just to think a thought, which is in our First Amendment, freedom of religion. Freedom of religion is not about freedom of which church you want to go to, freedom to be a Baptist versus a Catholic. No, it's freedom of conscience that I have the freedom to think what I want to
That's
think
right.
and not have the government to force their narrative into my thinking. But then there are five rights in the First Amendment. Freedom of religion followed immediately by freedom of speech, because not only do I have the right to think my thoughts, but I have the right to speak that thought out loud. These are some of the values that as conservatives we're supposed to be conserving. But then it goes on, right? The freedom, I mean, like, we're supposed to preserve the age old right that parents get to decide the direction of their children, not the school board.
Mhm.
We are supposed to preserve basic definitions like what it means to be a woman. We are to preserve the right, to bear arms, and just so many. You could just go down the Constitution, start with the first five rights in the First Amendment, and then move to the second and move on. We are supposed to be conserving those values that are the foundation upon which our nation exists. But the reality is that we are derelict in our duty. The reality is we have conserved absolutely none of the things that I just spoke about. We're supposed to preserve our border. Now, yes, we can point to the weaponization. We can point to the weaponization of our laws. We can point to the fact that, and I think this is something that I've heard you bring up before, that we don't have the same distribution outlets as the left have, right? That they have all of these different mediums that they can use to push their
That's
message.
right.
Laying that to the side, yes, we can point to a lot of things. But going back to my 2022 race, how do you explain? One, we don't even, one particular person did not endorse me. So how do you explain that? But then even more so, how do you explain conservatives on the ground not voting for me
Mhm.
or voting for someone who would have been a rhino at best, right? Dr. Oz would have been a rhino on his best
Yeah.
day. But up to that election, he had never even shown an ounce of conservatism. Now I'm just using Dr. Oz. But I can look at, what just happened a couple of weeks ago with Representative Bob Good over in
Right.
Virginia, who is the leader of the House Freedom Caucus. And up to this point, he's shown that he's willing to stand up for our values. And yet, he's in a race now. They just had the election. It's a race too close to call. How do you go from winning by 15 points 2 years ago, by more than 15 points 2 years ago, to now being in a race that's too close to call, if conservatives have become derelict in our duties of understanding why we exist in the first place? We exist to conserve those values, but we failed on absolutely every single thing that matters. We have lost it all. Those things that matter to us, we've lost it. And so that's what it means to conserve.